Yo, what's up, everybody? It's Alex here. Today, we're going to talk about Jungian archetypes, and as I promised. And in my last post, I said that I would create this video on Thursday, but I lied. It's actually Saturday, so I'm 2 days late. So I apologize for that. But today we're going to go over just the warrior archetype, and we're also going to delve into what archetypes are in the first place, because you need to be able to understand what archetypes are, obviously. So basically. Archetypes were created by a psychologist named Carl Jung, who was a 20th century philosopher and a psychologist, who was one of the most influential psychologists of all time. He's definitely up there with Freud, definitely up there with Nietzsche as far as philosophy. So, I mean, he's very well known, and I'd be surprised if you actually haven't heard of him. But if you haven't heard of him, you should look up some of his stuff because it's pretty cool. And so, what Jungian archetypes are basically universal representations of images or symbols or characters found within mythology or found within literature that are basically universal principles about, or universal domains of being in which human beings behave, regardless of what kind of culture or society that they were born into. And this is really interesting. So the one we're going to be focusing on today is the warrior. And so in my opinion, people tend to make the Jungian archetypes kind of a gendered thing. Really, it's not. Really, men and women can entail any one of these archetypes. It just happens to be that men and women happen to be more prone towards specific archetypes, whether you want to call that culture or genetics or whatever. I think it's both. I think maybe genetics might have more to do with it than people think, but that's okay. But anyway, so what the warrior basically is a domain of being in which the individual is basically a workaholic. Is a domain of being in which the individual is striving to reach a specific goal in his or her life, and is willing to do just about anything that it takes, or anything that it takes at all, in order to reach that specific goal. Now, there is the warrior in his or her fullness, and then there's the shadow form of the warrior. And so we're going to shout out with the warrior in his fullness. The warrior in his fullness is an individual who is working his or her way in the world, and he is doing so in such a manner that entails the betterment of not only his or herself, but everyone around him. Everyone around him. And the opposite of that would be the shadow form of the warrior, where the warrior is doing whatever it takes with no boundaries. And in the process of doing whatever it takes for this warrior individual and the shadow side of this warrior individual to get towards a specific goal, he's willing to hurt other people. And so a good example of this would be an individual who's a father, but is also a businessman. He's trying to slay it in the world. He's trying to slay. So he's trying to be this warrior, man, but he's forgetting about other aspects of his life, and he's letting other aspects of his life crumble all around him in the process of trying to reach whatever specific goal that he's trying to create, because he's in warrior mode. He's narrow and he's focused, and so he's not giving the time. He's not giving the time that he needs that he needs towards his family, towards raising his son or raising his daughter, or spending time with his wife, and he's detaching himself from other people. And perhaps he's lost empathy. And I think the moment that you lose empathy is the moment that you begin to lose people. Because you need to be able to connect to people personally. And people realize it when you don't have empathy or an emotional connection to them. Because it is expressed. That's something that is expressed through your everyday words on an unconscious or a subconscious level, whether you realize it or not. So you could be an asshole. You could be kind of a mean-hearted person without even recognizing that you're a mean person. You could be speaking to someone in like a demeaning way without even realizing it, because you can't connect to them on a personal level, because you're so narrow and you're so focused that you can't empathize or sympathize with whatever individual that you're speaking with. And so you're not going to be able to connect with other people. And so that's the shadow side of the warrior, is that in the process of trying to find and reach towards a specific goal, he lets the world shatter around him, and that can be detrimental. And it can also be detrimental to his or her health. I mean, Also, if you go too far into the shadow form of the warrior, I mean, you could be staying up like, you could be pulling all-nighters all the time, and then one day you have a mental breakdown, or you have some kind of health issue. You have to go to the ER because you didn't entail anything. You didn't find that balance. You didn't realize that balance perhaps would have helped your warrior form be more efficient anyways. But you became neurotic. You became almost like ideological and religious about trying to do whatever work that you were trying to do at any cost. And it ended up either harming you or it ended up harming other people. So that's the shadow side of the warrior. And that's something that that's a road you don't want to go down. And it's a road that, as far as the empathy part goes, I absolutely can relate to it. Because I think, for example, like entrepreneurs, we tend to develop, I think this is a thing that I'm seeing, we tend to develop kind of a superiority complex because we feel like we're doing something special. We feel like we're doing, we are doing things that most people are not. And so that kind of makes us automatically, that kind of makes us want to put ourselves on a pedestal. But, that's a bad idea. It's a bad idea to put yourself on a pedestal. And it's a bad idea to affirm to yourself over and over and over again that you are something that your actions clearly do not display. And so, that can be one side of the warrior spirit, that can be harmful. That's the shadow side of the warrior. But the warrior in his fullness is an individual who doesn't only work, and I'm saying he for simplicity's sake, but but the warrior in his fullness is an individual who doesn't just do things for himself, but he does things for other people, and he makes sure that he's including the health of his own psychological well-being in his everyday life, and he's ensuring that the world doesn't collapse around him. So he's very narrowly focused. Don't get me wrong. He is sacrificing. He is entailing sacrifice within his life. That's the whole point of the warrior archetype, and we've seen these kinds of people since the dawn of civilization. I mean, or not the dawn of civilization, but we've seen these kinds of stories represented within mythology since the dawn of mythology. And mythology probably, I'm not an anthropology. I'm not an anthropologist, but I'm pretty sure stories started around the same time as the hunter-gatherer societies started accumulating. So, it's important. And why I think the Jungian archetypes are important is because when you're striving to be something, when you're striving to be something transcendent, when you're striving to be something better, it's good to have like this transcendental figure in your mind of who to embody and who to represent. And usually we don't want to try to be exactly like other people, because other people are, we know that they're flawed. We know that they're not perfect. We know that all of us as humans are selfish, and we make lots of mistakes. So when we strive to be kind of a transcendental figure, then we strive to be as perfect as we possibly can, and that entails always developing the self. That entails personal development, and that should be what everyone attempts to strive for. And so, a really good archetypal figure for the warrior would be, I would say, Hercules or Odysseus or something of that nature. And a really good archetype for the king archetype, which we're not going to get to today, that would be Jesus, which is basically has the best of all of the archetypes. Jesus Christ had the best of all of the archetypes wrapped into one, and that's why he was considered the king. So that's really interesting. So anyways, guys, that is the symbolism, that is the mythology, that is the story of the warrior archetype. I hope you guys enjoy. If you like the content, make sure you like it and drop a comment below. I would really appreciate it. Anyways, guys, you have a good one.